We just witnessed one of the biggest events in finance, and that was, of course, the annual meeting at Davos from the World Economic Forum. Now, there was a lot of big players here, most notable Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse, Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, as well as a ton of other players from the Euroclear Group, Standard Chartered Bank. We also had the Banque de France there, BlackRock's Larry Fink. There were so many big players. And one common theme this year was tokenization. Tokenization was fully talked about the entire time because tokenization is one of the biggest things happening in the crypto space. We have here from the World Economic Forum, is tokenization the future? This was an event where we did have Brian Armstrong, we had Brad Garlinghouse, we had major players from Euroclear, the Banque de France, and even Standard Chartered. And it's crazy to have these types of conversations happening because if we just go back a couple years ago, all of this was speculation. Now it's becoming a fact. This is happening. There's no longer a question of if. No, it's when. When is this happening? And guess what? It's happening now. We know that tokenization is heating up more and more and more. Every single day or every other day, we see a new announcement of another big player jumping in on the tokenization space. Now, I want to play this video clip from Brad Garlinghouse because we have here from Zonix. This just happened at World Economic Forum. Tokenization is no longer theoretical. It's becoming financial infrastructure. Brad Garlinghouse, for our partner Ripple, highlighted it clearly. Stablecoins were the first real proof of tokenization, $19 trillion in 2024 to $33 trillion in 2025. In one single year, 75% growth. The message from Davos, this isn't about speculation. It's about neutral settlement, real efficiency, and regulated rails. Tokenization just moved from narrative to necessity. And remember, Zonix is working with Ripple on tokenization within the XRP ledger. But check this out.
Brad, on that note, there are lots of sound bites there, lots of response to. You're already seeing the momentum. First up, tokenized assets on Ripple's XRP ledger surged over 2,200% last year. Just weigh in from your perspective.
Well, I think I agree with a lot of what was said here. I do think the first poster child of tokenization was really stable coins. You saw, as Brian observed, massive growth last year. I think, went from in 2024, $19 trillion of transactions on stable coins last year. In 2025 is $33 trillion. So about 75% growth. I think many in our industry would say that's going to continue. I think to the extent there's space between what Brian was just talking about and how I think about the Bitcoin idea of a Bitcoin standard, I look at that and I think it's much more of the marriage. Sovereignty of fiat currencies, I believe, is for many countries sacrosanct. Ben Bernanke spoke at a Ripple event many years ago, and he made the point that governments will roll tanks into the street before giving up monetary supply, giving up the control of monetary supply, which stuck with me as, yeah, that makes sense. And so at Ripple, we very much focus on building the bridges between traditional finance, as Bill was describing, what we now call TradFi, and decentralized finance. And that has meant working with a lot of the banks around the world to kind of build those bridges.
So again, when we think about what's really going on here, yes, the bridges are being created. We are starting to see that interconnectivity become a reality. The regulated rails are now being put in place, and XRP and the XRPL, in my opinion, is one of those crucial rails. You got to remember that XRP already got the green light. It has clarity. It is that neutral settlement asset. It has that real efficiency tied back to it. It is a full regulated asset. This is very bullish for Ripple and even the XRP ledger stack. XRP holders should 100% be paying attention to what's happening at these major events. This is real. This is no longer speculation. This is no longer theoretical. This is happening. Now over here we do have bullish BlackRock CEO Larry Fink says tokenization is inevitable and the future points towards one common blockchain. What blockchain do you think he is referring to? Now, yes, a lot of people were talking about Ethereum. He mentioned Ethereum multiple times. Every single time that I hear Bitcoin or Ethereum brought up by these big names like Larry Fink, all I think about is what, Franklin Templeton's CEO Jenny Johnson said to us. Bitcoin is the greatest distraction away from the greatest disruption happening in finance. Because again, I do think that these are major distractions. Anyone that joins into the crypto space knows that Bitcoin and Ethereum are the two largest crypto assets. Beyond that, a lot of people don't do more research on the other assets. XRP, XLM, HBAR, these are very big projects that, in my opinion, quickly outpace Ethereum long term because of the efficiencies that they do offer. But everyone is getting force-fed Bitcoin and Ethereum. And do you ever question why? Because again, they don't want you in the real assets. I still think that Ethereum will do good, but a lot of these other assets like XRP, XLM, HBAR, they will all outperform Ethereum, in my opinion. Now, when we do think about BlackRock, and when we think about Ripple, for years we speculated on BlackRock and Ripple working together. Well, at Davos, we have BlackRock, Ripple, and Binance all being bullish on tokenization on the same stage. This got posted from Securitize. Check this out.
I think the movement towards tokenization is necessary. I think we need to move very rapidly to doing that. We would be reducing fees. We would do more democratization by reducing more fees if we had all investments on a tokenized platform that you could move from a tokenized money market fund to equities and bonds and back and forth.
I do think the first poster child of tokenization is really stablecoins. You saw, as Brian observed, massive growth last year. At Ripple, we very much focused on building the bridges between traditional finance, as Bill was describing, what we now call TradFi, and decentralized finance. And that has meant working with a lot of the banks around the world to kind of build those bridges.
I think tokenization is a huge one. I'm talking with probably a dozen governments about tokenizing some of their assets, because this way the government can actually realize the financial gains first and use that to develop those industries, extractions, trading markets, etc.
I think the movement towards
Now that video clip of CZ is from this one right here. CZ in talks with a dozen governments about tokenizing their assets. The next 5 years are going to be insane. Every player in this space, or even outside of the space in TradFi like Larry Fink, are telling you why you should be bullish on tokenization. And yes, I do believe that if CZ is in talks with a dozen banks regarding tokenizing their assets, just imagine how many banks that Ripple is involved in right now. Again, this is why you need to pay attention to what's really going on here with these big names around crypto. The big banks, governments that are all here trying to embrace the tech, trying to tokenize their assets. We already know that Hedera partnered up with, the Georgia government. They're already tokenizing their entire land registry on Hedera. I mean, these types of moves should not go unnoticed, but check this out.
Right now in the crypto space, there's really two proven industries, the exchanges and stablecoins. Those are large businesses. I'm really excited about three new more. I think tokenization is a huge one. I'm talking with probably a dozen governments about tokenizing some of their assets, because this way the government can actually realize the financial gains first and use that to develop those industries, extractions, the trading markets, etc. Payments is something that we've tried, have not really conquered have not really started in crypto. We tried, but nobody really pays in crypto. But I think now we're seeing the convergence of traditional payment methods being behind the scenes being supported by crypto. So the spenders swipe a card, crypto gets deducted from their account. The merchants gets US dollars or euros or whatever they get. So now when we have those bridges, I think payments is going to become pretty big. The third one is what you guys all mentioned is AI. The native currency for AI agent is going to be crypto. They're not going to use bank cards. They're not going to swipe credit cards. Crypto blockchain is the most native technology interface for AI agents. So when AI goes big, today AI they're not really agents. They don't buy tickets for you. They don't pay for restaurants for you. But when they actually do, those payments will be in crypto.
Okay, so there's the.
So again, when we think about the long-term view of crypto, yes, the adoption of crypto, things happening around crypto. I mean, in the next 5 years, everything is going to be on chain. I think majority of what we see in the financial space right now will be on chain. Mortgages moving on chain. The entire real estate asset class itself moving on chain. Why? Because it is an illiquid asset class, and moving on chain unlocks a tremendous amount of liquidity. Also, we think about cross-border payments. FX moving on chain will be massive because it frees up working capital. There's so much trapped capital in the system that crypto can unlock. It's in the trillions of dollars. This is why traditional finance will move faster on chain than you ever thought possible. We are still in the early phases of this. The next 12 months alone, you'll see how fast things can change. Once we get clarity, it will happen even faster. Everything accelerates after that moment. But we also go over here. Ripple is constantly expanding around their tokenization stack. Ripple is teaming up with TJM, a regulated broker for institutional investors, to make trading and clearing faster and easier. Tokenization and on-chain infrastructure are making real-world assets more efficient. When we think about this type of adoption, it's not just adoption. Like, they are building out the infrastructure for the tokenization space to actually become a possibility. What Ripple has been offering for years is a full infrastructure stack for the new system. And that's where a lot of people overlook just how big XRP will be. XRP is not just another digital asset. It's not just a neutral bridge currency. This is one of the core blockchains that will be tapped into by the banking system, by major institutional players, enterprises, you name it. We're already starting to see some very large players lining up to tap into the Ripple ecosystem. Again, many people, yes, when we think about Ripple and XRP, they're two different things, but they are converging. They've been converging for years. Ripple has been utilizing the XRP ledger. They've been utilizing XRP in their stack. And this is because the XRP ledger was one of the first blockchains in this space to have a built-in DEX and also tokenization capabilities. That is so crucial when we think about the world that we are entering right now. And when you have names like the DTCC saying, hey, tokenization is delivering real outcomes, faster settlement, enhanced liquidity, 24/7 markets, tokenization is accelerating, are you ready? You better listen. Because yes, tokenization is accelerating. It's moving faster than ever. Every other day. I mean, I just talked about this. Every other day, we're seeing new all-time highs in the tokenization space. It's not slowing down. Bitwise also said that tokenization market has 10x in just the past 2 years. One of the biggest players behind that has been Chainlink. That's it. That's the tweet. Now, again, if we think about tokenization 10xing in the past 2 years, think about what tokenization can do with clear rules. That's why we are looking at this next era of digital assets. And talking about that next era of digital assets, big shout out to Bank XRP for this. We have the era of digital assets is just getting started. BitGo CEO discusses the massive potential of tokenization and institutional crypto infrastructure as the future of finance takes center stage. Check it out.
I think all the cryptocurrencies are going to continue to see strength.
I'm sure you saw the comments from Jamie Dimon about how, this is a better technology, to kind of run everything's on the token or crypto layer. That's great. The more it becomes mainstreamed, though, the less impressive Bitcoin's performance does. I'm just curious if you have any comments about that.
I think there's many use cases on top of the digital technology that we have. So Bitcoin deserves full credit for having pioneered this space as the first token that we had. Initially, it was designed, to be potentially a payment system. On the payments side, it hasn't gotten a lot of traction there, but it's certainly very clearly a great store of value. I think all the cryptocurrencies are going to continue to see strength over the long arc of time. But then on top of that, we now have new use cases, right? So stablecoins, you're very familiar with, may turn out to be an easier payment system for most people because it's one-to-one tied to the price of the dollar. On top of that, we've got DeFi, we've got tokenized equities, and rather than take it from me, you can ask Larry Fink from BlackRock. He says every asset, every stock, every bond can be tokenized. So I think there's a lot of excitement, not just from the early players, the technology side, but also from traditional finance, which is really why it makes it so exciting to be here at New York Stock Exchange today.
Yeah. And again, this next phase will be institutional adoption. This next phase will be tokenization becoming a crucial piece of the system. Every Wall Street name, every asset management company, every institutional player, they're all telling you exactly what they want to do. They want to tokenize all their assets. They want to bring on, their entire stack on chain. They want to automate payments. They want to automate their internal systems. All of this happens with blockchain at the core. So we are in the beginning stages. I do agree, right? Like, this is just getting started, but this next phase, this next wave of adoption is going to come from the full potential of tokenization being realized in institutional players building out their new infrastructure with crypto at the core. And that's where we start to see mass utilization of the underlying rails, those regulated rails. Just like if we go back over here, yes, those regulated rails, aka XRP, HBAR, XLM. But right now, XRP has, 1 foot through the door already. It has full-on clarity because of that SEC lawsuit. And that's a big one to not overlook. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.